Aboard the Galactic Council flagship, fireworks burst in celebration. The human resistance has officially ended, papers signed, species conquered. The Chancellor raises his glass just as the stars above shimmer and disappear behind a black curtain. It isn't the sky. It's Earth's last fleet, decloaking in perfect silence. "That's not a moon," one alien whispers. "No," says another voice trembling. "That's a counterattack." The ballroom of the Vorex Ascendant shimmered with arrogance. Crystalline chandeliers hummed with plasma light. Silver chalices clinked. Alien laughter bounced off titanium walls like poorly tuned music. The war was over, and the galaxy had won. Humanity was finished. Or so they believed. At the far end of the hall stood High Chancellor Zervan, draped in a robe woven from starlight fibers, his gills twitching with smug satisfaction. He raised his glass, three-fingered hand trembling slightly under the weight of history. "To peace!" he boomed. A cheer erupted across the room. Dozens of alien species, scaled, feathered, bioluminescent, howled in approval. The Terran threat was no more. Earth's resistance had crumbled 3 cycles ago. Their colonies now ashes. Their fleets vaporized in heroic but futile gestures. A poetic loss. Neat. Contained. Marketable. And as the centerpiece of the evening, Commander Lynn Thorne, the highest-ranking human officer captured alive, stood in a translucent energy cage. Smiling. Not the grin of defeat. Not bitterness or fake composure. Just calm. A thin, disarming calm that unnerved the wise and amused the fools. From the shadows near the cage, Envoy Alira watched her. Pale-skinned and multi-eyed, Alira was no stranger to diplomacy, but there was something about this human. The way she stood. The way her eyes scanned everything as if it were a chessboard and everyone else, pawns with legs. "You enjoyed the show?" Alira asked, stepping closer. Thorne tilted her head. "It's a bit overproduced. The lighting's harsh, and the fish man looks like he's going to choke on his own victory." Alira's expression barely shifted. "You've lost. Earth is dust. Your fleet disbanded. There's no need to pretend." "Pretend?" Thorne raised an eyebrow. "I'm here, aren't I? Standing. Breathing. Observing. I'd call that tactical patience." Before Alira could respond, General Surik approached. Towering and armored, his hide gleamed like volcanic rock. A war veteran with enough scars to shame a battlefield. "Why is this one not executed?" he barked. "She insulted 3 commanders at dinner and taught my translator unit sarcasm. She is a curiosity," Zervan said, approaching with his entourage. "We must study what remains of them. Their minds. Their limits." "My limit," Thorne interrupted, "is poorly cooked squid. Just a note for your chefs." Surik growled. Zervan smiled. "Still cracking jokes, human? I'm a guest at your party," she said, stepping closer to the cage's edge. "It'd be rude not to participate." Zervan turned to the audience and gestured toward the stars beyond the panoramic dome. "Let this night mark the dawn of unity. The Terran threat has ended. The galaxy is finally—" And then, the stars vanished. No sound. No flash. Just gone. A black curtain slid across the void outside like ink spilling over glass. Silence swallowed the room. First came confusion. Then panic. "What is that?" someone whispered. "A solar malfunction?" "No, the planet's sensors." Surik turned toward the dome, his voice low and sharp. "That's not a shadow. It was a fleet. A massive, silent armada. Dozens of ships the size of cities. Jagged, obsidian black. No visible propulsion. No heat. No communication signals. Just presence. Cold, deliberate presence." Alira's throat tightened. "But Earth's fleet was destroyed, we confirmed it." "Clearly," Thorne said, smiling wider. "You confirmed the wrong things." A high-pitched wail split the air. The room shifted from ceremony to chaos. Officers sprinted for terminals. Screens blinked red. Power reserves dropped without explanation. External communications jammed. The fleet outside remained still, watching. Then a hologram ignited in the middle of the ballroom. A human admiral stood tall, flanked by officers in midnight blue armor. The seal of Earth's Defense Council hovered above his head. He spoke, calm and casual. "Attention, citizens of the Galactic Accord. This is not a declaration of war. That happened 7 years ago. This is the follow-up." Zervan staggered back. "This is impossible. We crushed them." The Admiral continued unfazed. "You misunderstood humanity. We don't fight fair. We don't announce vengeance. We wait. We listen. And when you've grown comfortable, we remove comfort." The hologram vanished. Then all 37 power cores on the Vorex Ascendant simultaneously rebooted. Lights dimmed. Gravity fluctuated. Weapon systems deactivated. Outside, the human fleet began to move. No weapons fired. No threats issued. Just presence. Surik bellowed to his generals. "Arm the defense grid! Scramble the escorts!" "No use," a technician shouted. "They're inside our encryption. They've already overridden our network." Thorne stretched her arms inside the cage. "Funny thing about your surrender terms," she said. "You made me sign them. But you never checked the reverse clause. Page 32, fine print." Zervan turned, his face a storm of disbelief. "What clause?" "The one that said." Thorne paused, savoring the moment. "Should any surviving Terran fleet reappear, all terms are void, and the game restarts." Alira stared. "You let us win." "No," Thorne corrected gently. "We let you celebrate." With a flick of her wrist, her restraints collapsed into harmless sparks. The energy cage shimmered and died. On cue, a human dropship decloaked inside the ballroom ceiling, silent, seamless, terrifying. It opened. 6 armored soldiers stepped out, weapons holstered. Commander Thorne walked toward them without urgency. She stopped beside Alira, eyes calm. "You're one of the few who ask questions instead of giving orders. I respect that." Alira swallowed. "What happens now?" Thorne smiled, soft and dangerous. "We collect what's ours. Then we teach the galaxy what humans really are." The dropship rose, its shadow swallowing the hall. Behind them, Earth's last fleet moved as one. Silent. Strategic. Unstoppable. And finally, visible. 36 minutes after Earth's last fleet decloaked, 7 capital ships belonging to the Galactic Accord were drifting powerless in orbit. Not destroyed, just silent. Paralyzed. Their command crews sat inside like museum exhibits, stunned by systems that refused to obey. Commander Lynn Thorne stood inside the control deck of the human flagship, Blackstar Widow, sipping stale coffee from a chipped mug. "It's still hot," she muttered. Behind her, Lieutenant Miles Renner, rail-thin and sarcastic even under threat of death, leaned on a console. "Of course it's hot. It's military coffee. Made to survive nuclear winters and incompetence." Lynn smiled faintly. "Speaking of incompetence status? Fleet-wide control confirmed. We're inside their entire relay net. Even their private channels. You should hear how many different ways they're using the word unthinkable. How poetic. Poetic would be letting them keep their pants." She turned to the viewport. The stars had returned, brilliant and sharp. The illusion of galactic order restored, though now wrapped in the quiet presence of something much older, much colder. Earth's last fleet. The Spectres. Ships black as void, constructed from lost blueprints and classified science. Earth was never supposed to survive long enough to finish. "I still don't understand it," said Alira's voice over the internal comms. She was now technically a diplomatic guest. "Technically. You hid these ships for years?" Lynn turned to the comms. "We hid the idea of them. You buried an entire fleet behind a fabricated defeat?" "No. We disguised survival as failure. The art of losing convincingly. That's very human." Alira's silence spoke volumes. The truth was simple. After the Accord's so-called final offensive crushed Earth's visible forces, the real work began. Hidden bunkers. Shipyards carved into asteroid shadows. Engineers trained in myths and dead languages. An operation so secret even Earth's civilian government thought they'd lost. That was the point. Hope was always the bait. Why show up now? Alira asked. You could have waited longer. Years. Let us grow softer. Oh, we could have, Lynn said, tone sharpening. But you held a party. That was unwise. On the second deck, human soldiers moved through the Vorax Ascendant with eerie calm. They didn't loot. They didn't threaten. They catalogued. Lieutenant Nova, barely 24, led a squad past a group of caged prisoners, galactic officers who hours ago had declared Earth a conquered feral world. Now they avoided eye contact. Ma'am, her sergeant muttered, we have 3 weapon vaults untouched. All theirs. Do we seize or photograph? Leave them. Leave them? Nova nodded. Let them keep something. Makes the fall slower. Down in the hangar, General Surik sat chained to a bench. Still armored. Still fuming. Across from him, a small human boy, clearly no older than 10, sat with a clipboard. You're mocking me, Surik snarled. The boy shrugged. Not really. I'm inventory control. You're using a child for interrogation? Nope. Just making sure you're hydrated. The boy handed him a juice box. Surik stared at it like it was a threat. Press the straw through the foil bit. Like this. The boy demonstrated, sipping. Mango pineapple. Humans invented it during a long war. Helps with morale. The irony didn't land. But the point did. Even the children here were part of the plan. Back aboard the Blackstar Widow, the command bridge lit up. Commander, Renner said, voice tight. Incoming message from High Chancellor Zervan. He's requesting an audience. Lynn raised an eyebrow. Did he say request or demand? His exact words were, and I quote, we beg an understanding of your terms. Lynn leaned back. Alira, she said into the open line. You're listening, right? Of course. Tell Zervan we'll speak in 20 minutes. And tell him he's hosting. I don't think. That wasn't a suggestion. 22 minutes later, aboard a conference deck hastily cleared for talks, High Chancellor Zervan stood in a deep bow. Lynn didn't return it. The humans entered casually. No guards. No weapons. Just presence. 3 officers, including Renner, and Lynn herself. I'd offer refreshments, Zervan began. But I assume you don't trust. We brought snacks, Renner said, holding up a protein bar. Peanut butter. Genetically modified to taste like confidence. Zervan's eye ridges twitched. We wish to discuss peace, he said finally. Define peace, Lynn said. An agreement. A mutual understanding. An end to threats. An end to our threats or yours? Zervan flinched. Your people are capable of great violence. Lynn nodded. Yes. That's why we smile so much. It's disarming. A quiet beat passed. We thought you were gone, Zervan admitted. That was the plan. You vanished. Lynn leaned forward. We evolved. Outside the station's viewing window, Earth's ships repositioned. Not in attack formation. In a net. One perfectly geometric sphere, surrounding the Accord's core fleet. Not attacking. Not transmitting demands. Just waiting. Predators don't always pounce. Sometimes they study. And the galaxy was beginning to feel very studied. Later that night, Alira visited Lynn in her temporary quarters. Not a prison anymore. Just a room. You didn't want conquest, Alira said. So what is this? Lynn looked up from a chessboard. Stability. You're surrounding them with warships. Correction. We're surrounding them with a lesson. A lesson in what? In what happens, Lynn said softly, when you poke the wrong animal in the zoo. You think the Accord will surrender? We're not asking them to. We're just making sure they remember this moment. For how long? Lynn pushed a pawn forward. Forever. Smile when you speak to them, Commander Linthorne said, smoothing the crease on her uniform. It keeps the fear warm. The human delegation stood inside the grand chamber of the Galactic Accord, a hall designed to dwarf its occupants. The walls shimmered with star maps and rotating holograms of dead wars. The dais rose like a throne. Everything screamed diplomacy, if only for those who hadn't met humans. 300 alien dignitaries whispered as Lynn and her team approached. Lieutenant Renner leaned in. You think they can hear my heartbeat? You have a heartbeat? Lynn asked. Not when I smile like this. He flashed his most terrifying grin, faint, unreadable, the kind predators wear when they've already won. They stopped at the foot of the dais. High Chancellor Zervan stood flanked by his counselors, tall and brittle-looking, like glass sculptures that assumed superiority came from symmetry. You return here under strange banners, Zervan said. You come not as conquered nor as equals. We come as what's left, Lynn replied. And sometimes what's left is what wins. There was a pause. Whispers returned. A translator droid struggled to keep up. An insected advisor buzzed in distress. Zervan raised a hand. We agreed to this meeting in good faith. Let's not insult each other, Lynn interrupted gently. We're humans, Chancellor. We don't do things in good faith. We do them in exact faith. Calculated faith. He blinked. Then why are you here? Because you're about to lie to your entire assembly, she said, folding her hands. And I'd like to be present when you do. A hush fell. The kind of silence that only fear maintains. Lynn took a step forward, speaking clearly. You're going to tell them this was a misunderstanding. That Earth overreacted. That you were unaware of what your subfleets did to our relay colonies. You'll say your chain of command was broken. That this, she gestured vaguely toward the distant outline of Earth's shadow fleet visible through the skylight, was unnecessary. And it wasn't? A four-eyed minister asked. Lynn stared at him. You sent a fleet of executioners to a wounded world, and expected it to die quietly. She stepped closer to the dais. We didn't die. We built. We adapted. We learned your systems. We studied your psychology. We learned how your diplomats lie and how your generals stall. We watched, and we waited. And then, when the galaxy moved on, she snapped her fingers. You forgot us. And that's when we became dangerous. Renner added lightly. You know how hard it is to be forgotten in the age of interstellar surveillance? We had to erase ourselves from existence. That takes effort. The insected counselor twitched nervously. Are you threatening us? Threats require uncertainty, Lynn replied. We're past that. Zervan narrowed his eyes. What do you want? That was the question. And Lynn smiled. Imagine, she said, pacing now, a galaxy where humans didn't pretend to be civil. Where we didn't mask strategy with smiles. Where every war we fought was open. Do you think we would have lost? No one answered. Now imagine a galaxy where we operate from shadows. Where no one knows if we're watching. Where any failed negotiation might end with your planetary shield vanishing mid-cycle, or your council waking up with every AI system scrambled by something we whispered into your satellites months ago. She stopped walking. That's the galaxy you're in now. Another murmur passed. This one tinged with dread. Elira, sitting quietly behind the delegation, met Lynn's gaze. And nodded. She understood. She'd seen what humanity looked like when the mask came off. Lynn turned back to Zervan. But we're not monsters, she said gently. That's comforting, Zervan replied stiffly. We're worse, Renner muttered behind her. Lynn smiled wider. We're teachers. This was your lesson. Suddenly, the chamber lights flickered. A soft chime echoed. The floor beneath the dais shimmered. A 3D projection activated, showing the Accord's central defense grid, once thought impenetrable. Red marks appeared. Gate relays blacked out. Defense satellites, silenced. 24 high-security channels, breached. An automated system voice rang through the hall. Security Protocol 77 triggered. Unauthorized access. System override in progress. Zervan turned pale. Lynn held up a small chip. This, she said, was delivered to your ambassador on Earth as a peace offering. You called it quaint. A human artifact. She dropped it to the floor. It shattered. You didn't just come here to make a point, said a reptilian elder. You set a trap. We are the trap, Lynn said softly. The humans you see here? We're polite, calm, diplomatic. She pointed skyward. Up there? That's what happens when diplomacy is done. Counselors began to rise from their seats, agitated. Sit down, Lynn said. Everyone froze. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't moved. But something in her tone, a thread of steel woven through silk, tightened every throat in the room. You thought the fight was over. You thought Earth was broken. And now you sit surrounded by ships you can't detect, facing weapons you don't understand, hearing words you pretend not to fear. She straightened her jacket. The only reason this chamber is still standing is because Earth doesn't want revenge. And what do you want? Zervan asked again. To be remembered. The delegation stood to leave. Renner gave the council a wink. Try not to misplace us again, he said. Next time, we won't be so educational. Alira walked behind Lynn. They'll never sleep again. Good, Lynn replied. That's how you keep predators honest. Outside, the Black Star Widow powered its engines. Across orbit, Earth's hidden fleet peeled away. No salutes, no signals. Just presence. And silence. The kind that reminds civilizations what happens when they assume the wolves are extinct. Above the Galactic Accord chambers, Earth's last fleet hovered in perfect silence. Ships crafted in secrecy, coated in signal-dampening materials and designed for one purpose: to remind the galaxy why you never finish a war with humans halfway. Commander Lynn Thorne stood alone at the forward observation bay of the Black Star Widow. The curve of the planet below shimmered beneath her boots. Lights flickered across continents as news of the Accord breach spread like wildfire. They're panicking, said Alira, entering quietly. Multiple species have called emergency council sessions. Several militaries have gone on alert. One tried to hail us. We didn't respond. Good, Lynn replied without looking up. Let them think. You really meant it, didn't you? When you said this wasn't revenge. Lynn turned. It isn't. Revenge is a waste of strategy. This is calibration. Renner strode in next, carrying a datapad and a cup of very strong, very illegal Terran espresso. You're going to want to see this, he said, handing over the pad. 10 planets just activated wartime lockdown. The Avlections are mobilizing orbital cannons. And the Krahari? Their emperor fainted. Really? Lynn smirked. Mid-speech. Right after you said we are the trap. A beat of silence passed, and then all three humans chuckled. Not because it was funny, but because the timing was just so perfectly human. Imagine explaining that to history, Alira said. Empire collapsed due to tone of voice. Lynn set the datapad down. We've made our point. She tapped a sequence into the console. Disengage cloak, she ordered. The Black Star Widow rippled like glass, revealing itself fully in orbit. Seconds later, the rest of Earth's stealth fleet appeared. Dozens of vessels, each one custom-built and ominously quiet. It wasn't the size that terrified. It was the precision. These were not ships for war. They were scalpels for a galaxy infected with arrogance. Across thousands of comm channels, alarms went off. Sensors locked. AI war matrices began calculating threat levels, and froze. The ships weren't showing heat signatures. They weren't showing anything. They don't know how we built them, Brenner said, watching data pour in. Because we built them while they weren't watching. And we only let them see now, Lynn added. So they'll never feel safe again. A hologram lit up, Zervan's face, pale and strained. He was calling from the chamber. We request clarification, he began carefully. Oh, that's a new diplomatic term for begging, Renner whispered. Lin leaned forward. You're confused, Chancellor. You thought we came to destroy you. But we don't destroy. We unbalance. We shake the foundations and leave before the walls fall. You threaten the Accord. I remind the Accord, Lin said calmly, that humans aren't prey. We never were. She took a breath. And now, the real purpose of our visit. There was silence on the channel. Lin continued. Your sectors have grown complacent. Trade routes exploit vulnerable worlds. Peacekeeping forces that look more like occupiers. You thought no one noticed. We did. Alira brought up a map, planetary systems marked with red. 516 systems under direct or indirect exploitation, she said. Your treaties protect the aggressors. Your rules favor the ancient empires. Your enforcement is cosmetic. Renner stepped forward. You had order, not justice. We're here to invert that equation. Lin nodded. We will not invade. We will not occupy. But every time your fleets move unlawfully, you'll lose a ship. No reason. No warning. Just a quiet message, we saw. Zervan was silent. The entire Accord Council, listening in, could do nothing but watch Earth's fleet float above them like a guillotine made of shadows and resolve. This isn't peace, a voice from the council said. It's the only kind that works with people like you, Lin replied. There was another pause. A long, long pause. Then, what if we resist? Renner actually laughed. Then we'll teach you a new word, extinction. Lin cut the channel. She stood at the command center, eyes on the stars. We gave them every chance, Alira said. They thought the war ended, Lin replied. But Earth doesn't end. We hibernate. And when we wake up, we change the rules, Renner finished. In the silence that followed, Lin issued her final command. Send the Accord a message. Just 2 words. She looked at the planet below. They'll understand. Renner tapped the console. Message sent. On every screen across the galaxy it appeared. We're awake.